Thank you, Sarah, and I appreciate all of you that are in attendance. Those of you that have been to one of our previous webinars, welcome back. And for those of you this is your first time, then we certainly want to give you a big welcome. Also keeping in mind that if you go to our website, you can see some of the previous webinars that we have done. So today let's talk about increasing employee retention through mentoring. You know, employees leave companies every day. And, you know, I can remember when I first started in the talent management area over 30 years ago, that many times I was hearing organization making such comments as, well, it's okay because that's what's expected in our industry. So this large turnover, that's okay because that's what the industry expects. Or what I might hear them say is, well, you know, we already planned for a certain percentage of turnover in our organization and we just budget for it. You know, I remember being shocked at such statements as if turnover and employees leaving an organization was okay. I remember asking in one of the sessions that I did with an organization to think about the investment the organization's made and pretend that's your personal investment. You know, what would you do if you had $50,000 and you're going to give it to a broker for investment? Now, over a 2-year period, you want to make sure that that money is where it should be. It should have grown with what you want to be able to do. You certainly don't want to be in a situation where the money you gave the investor, you know, actually was gone, went down, was less than what you did, or stayed the same in doing that. You know, this is the same thing, thinking about the organization's dollars. And I remember when I asked that type of question, you know, what would you do? Would you want it to, that $50,000 to increase, stay the same, or go down? When I asked that and people had comments about, well, it's okay to have turnover, suddenly there was some silence in doing that. Now, in addition to that, I just recently read some research that as millennials start taking over the workforce, the employee retention rate is continuing to drop. And I was a little stunned by that statement. It's kind of like, wait a minute, we're talking about retention, you've got to keep, and yet it's going down. So I continued to read, and what the research was telling us was the fact that although millennials are coming in and out, and they're actually filling positions, it's important to understand that these employees don't have the same sense of company loyalty and engagement that are going to make a big long-term dent in your retention factors. The issues around turnover and retention have changed drastically over the years. And more organizations are realizing really how deeply this is affecting their bottom line. They realize that issues around retention have to be addressed from day one and continue on by nurturing an employee's tenure at the company because you want to keep them. So how do you make that happen? How are we going to help you make that happen? Well, we're going to do that by looking at the following agenda. We're really going to talk about the business case and why it's important to think about retention and improve your retention and going forward. Then we're going to talk about how mentoring addresses retention, the reasons that we know are the main reasons employees leave an organization. We're going to take you through future trends that we are seeing around retention, and also exactly the step-by-step that you need to take to have a good, solid mentoring program to reduce your retention. You know, now let's talk about the way that retention is really important in what you're doing. Why is it so important that we talk about this retention? And we all know that has to do with the bottom line. But before we go into this in too much effort, Sarah, can you take us through the first poll?
The first poll is, do you feel you know the real cost of turnover at your organization? Is it yes, exactly, yes, but more opinion than fact, or no? Well, Judy, it looks like about half have voted, so let's give it a few more moments. Okay, I'm ready to stop It looks like 67% have voted no, followed by about 26 saying yes, but more opinion than fact.
Okay, great. Actually, that's interesting to see. First of all, if you don't really know what that cost is, we're going to talk about some of those things that may bring up, some ideas of, uh-oh, this really is costing us some dollars in doing that. But thank you, Sarah, for taking us through the poll. Okay, the next thing we want to talk about, is what you could lose if you don't actually think about retention in what you're doing. The total real cost can be up to 2.5 times salary for someone leaving the job market. And this was an article that was in the Huffington Post in February of this year, and looking at that. There's been study after study regarding the cost of a new hire. I mean, I remember when some of these first came out, and, up here we're saying it's 2 times an annual salary. And I can tell you, working with organizations, we've seen it as high as 4 to 6 times. And think about some of those levels. It's not just your, employee that, is making the least compensation, but what about some of those that are making a lot of money? And in those where, it really is going to be a problem getting somebody in there right away, that's where you're starting to get into that 8 times. Think about some of the factors we're talking about when you talk about, the real cost of someone's salary and rehiring and doing that. We're talking about things like, of course, recruitment, and then have you ever thought about how much time someone has to take off being productive in the workforce and actually take the time to review resumes or actually go through the interviewing process? And then what about productivity? When somebody leaves a job and they leave a hole in a department, somebody's got to take that work over. So are you missing some things? Is it possible you're missing some sales, some sense of productivity? And again, this is something you've got to think about when you think about, losing the individual and therefore losing and it costing the organization about 2 times the salary that they're in. Now, what we do know, and this came from Harvard Business Review earlier this year, professional and business services, this is the top industry that is struggling to retain employees in what they're doing. And again, you've got to start thinking about all the cost and what it costs to get a new hire in there. And again, we're not talking if somebody leaves the organization, somebody that goes in and just really messes things up. We're talking about all the normal types of things that go, and you've got to consider when you don't have good retention and people are having to be rehired and so on as we go forward. So we've talked about, these are some of the things you could lose. So now let's kind of talk about mentoring for retention and doing that and taking it forward. And Sarah, can you take us through our next poll?
Sure, Judy. Our next poll question is, what is your organization's biggest challenge regarding retention? Is it career development, compensation, leadership or management, onboarding, supportive environment, or emotional factors? All right, Judy, it looks like about half have voted, so we'll give it a few more minutes or moments. Okay, voting has slowed down, so let's close the poll. 48% have voted career development, followed by 22% with compensation.
Okay, great. Yeah, we have found that career development is a biggie, which is why we, had this webinar and focusing on that type of thing. Also, it was, interesting in compensation, and we're going to talk about that in some ways also, and what that really means. But thank you, Sarah. Appreciate it. Okay, we know that there's challenges around retention. I mean, these are things that we know, and here's 3 major areas that we have seen around. First one you're going to agree with. You just said, that was a big one for you. So it's a perceived lack of career development in doing that. Surveys show the majority of the labor market is unhappy with their career development opportunities in what they're doing. By participating in a mentoring program, an individual will have help from a mentor to really target the competencies that define a career path. Keep in mind that a mentor normally has been there and done that. So part of what happens is the fact that they really can help the mentee to kind of charter their course throughout the organization in doing this. And in addition to that, the mentee is looking at a mentor's, what their professional path was, what their network was, and again, this can really help a mentee in their career development because the mentor is sharing their network and helping them forward in doing that. The next thing we know is bad managers. You know, there's an old saying that people don't leave an organization, they leave a manager. And we've all seen this, and I'd be willing to bet if we took a quick poll, and how many of you have seen this, you'd probably, all of you could think of situations in which this happens in doing that. Mentoring isn't just for the new employee. It's also for those employees that have probably been with the organization a long period of time and may have been promoted to another position or they've taken on some more complex assignments. And without that, what can happen is individuals are going to walk out the door. When an individual takes on certain leadership or management roles in what they're doing, they may have skills to perform the tasks that are a part of that, but they may not have the skills to ensure they're going to be a good manager and they're going to be successful in what they're doing. And then the last one that we know as retention is around somebody leaves and goes to a better job. Now, many times I have to tell you that sometimes I think this is just an excuse. Somebody goes in for an exit interview. Everybody wants to get out of there as quick as they can. So the two things are looking at it was a better job offer or it was more money in doing that. And I don't think that's always the main reason why somebody leaves. But, thinking about that and thinking about the fact that mentoring allows an individual to really look at their career. It also allows the organization to solve some of those management issues, and all this can lead to employees feeling, a sense of company loyalty in what it does. It also gives them a sense that they can look at different careers they may not even have thought about. And, one thing we want you to think about when we're talking about, a better job and mentoring retention is the fact that we know the individual needs to make sure that there's a job within the organization they might be interested in, but more often not being able to do that, they leave. I know we had one particular organization, and what they began to see was that the jobs people were going to were jobs they had right inside of this organization, but without some mentoring help for individuals and not thinking they had a very good career path, all of a sudden they were losing these people, and it was strange because, as I said, the jobs they wanted were right there within their own organization. Need to leave. So what we're going to do now is talk about how mentoring addresses some of these potential retention factors. And so at this point in time, Sarah, will you take us through our next poll?
Sure, Judy. Our third poll is, do you have a mentoring program in place? Yes, no, or we're considering it. About half have voted. Okay, I'm ready to close the poll with 48% considering it, followed by 35% with yes.
Okay. Glad to see those yes percentages, but we also, great that 48% of you are considering it, and we sincerely hope that you begin to look at some of these factors that mentoring, can move forward. Okay, so going from here, let's think about, some of the ways mentoring can help retention. Especially that one around perceived lack of career development in what they were doing. And taking that forward and looking at that, mentoring can help increase perceived career development opportunities. And again, just like I mentioned to you before in going through that, because part of what we heard from individuals that were part of this organization is if they had known that those types of career paths and those particular job roles existed, they'd have stayed with the organization. And the organization was kind of looking back saying, I can't believe we lost these people to things that were part of our own organization. So you got to think about those things. You know, building a solid talent pipeline also reduces your cost for internal movement and taking that forward. It's a little bit of, you know, are you going to look at those individuals to fill roles internally, or is it always going to be externally? And looking at it, what can you do? So here's some examples of how a mentor can help with career development in what they're doing. First of all, the mentor, again, has been there, done that, and they can help mentor an individual on the skills that might be missing that advance your career, because many times the mentee hasn't been maybe in a leadership or management position. So mentors can help to give them some advice on those overall skills that they want to look at to manage their career. Also, what the mentor can do is introduce the mentee to their own network and increases visibility. I mean, that's one of the greatest gifts a mentor can give a mentee, is to really give them the gift of introducing them to their own network and what you're doing. We had an example from an individual, and I remember part of what they said was when they first started with the organization, if it hadn't been for their mentor, nobody in that organization probably would have even known who this individual was until 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road. And then the mentor can be there on challenges in that role. So you've got a safe environment, and individuals can go in and they can talk about, you know, their current role. They can talk about some of the things that they see going on that might be challenges and get ready for them. So having mentoring for retention around that lack of career development can be really important. Also, the mentor can share their own progression story, because again, mentor's been there, done that. Now, another thing that we wanted to look at was those bad managers. Okay, what are we going to do to kind of bring those bad managers into that good manager focus of what we're doing? You know, mentoring can help develop your managers, and with a program that's focused on leadership in doing that. You know, one of the things that we have seen that's one of the main differences between formal and formal mentoring programs is that in informal mentoring programs, number one, you have no way of knowing if the mentor and mentee are working on objectives that will help the organization, no way of knowing if the time and effort that they're putting in is helping the organization. But, you know, one of the worst things about informal mentoring programs is the fact that you have no way of knowing if bad habits are being passed on. So as many times employees will, or individuals will copy what they see their manager doing, you could have a lot of bad habits that can be passed on. You want to make sure that in your mentoring program you're focusing on good managers with good skills and competencies, and they actually have good habits in doing that. So here's some of the ways that mentoring can help to get rid of those bad managers in doing this and turn them into good managers. Don't just let them go, turn them into good managers in doing that. One of those ways is the mentor can actually help develop. So if you've got an individual going into management or already in management, you know, the mentor can help them develop, you know, some leadership competencies that are important for them to focus on. And then how to navigate the organizational politics. One of the best things that I see that a mentor can do is, let's say that I've come from another organization and I'm hired into this new organization, and we had a certain way of doing things in the old organization that I was in. But I get into this new organization and my mentor is going to help me to, okay, there's certain things, certain competencies, certain habits, certain, you know, behaviors that you might have done before, and those are fine here. They're really good. You need to continue those. But you know, some of those things, Judy, that you did in your old organization, those are not acceptable here. So the mentor not only can help the individual, or help me, I should say, since I'm the individual needing this, that the mentor can take and help me with competencies and leadership competencies that are important for the organization I'm going into. And then we all know there's organizational politics. My mentor can help me to be able to kind of skip those minefields or ways in which I could sabotage my health myself in those organizational politics. And most of all, my mentor gives me a safe place to talk about, any challenging situations that I have come across, whether I happen to be in a management position already and I can find out better ways to solve these challenging situations, or if I'm brand new to the organization, I've got a mentor to make sure that I turn into a good manager within this organization. Now, there's some additional retention factors that we want to talk, and one of those, first of all, has to do with having a supportive HR environment, making sure that, when you think about retention, you think about work programs such as telework or work-life balance, or, rethinking some of your, time off policies and what you're doing, and also trying to make sure that those time off policies, that when the individual comes back, they're not punished for being gone, that things are well balanced. Another area is looking at emotional factors. These all lead to job satisfaction, and job satisfaction then, of course, increases retention. Supportive HR environment and emotional factors, these are things that are only, influenced indirectly by organizational policies or procedures. In other words, you can put down certain things, but in your HR function and your policies and procedure, but that's not always going to do it in addressing these two areas. I can tell you, though, that when you start bringing the human contact in, of having a mentor, this begins to illustrate to an individual that the organization really cares about me. And this is not just talk through policies or procedures or things that the organization has put together or mandated, but this is something that I can see as a mentee, that the organization really cares about me. That becomes very important and really begins to address these. We hear this quite often based on evaluations from organizations, and when we go through and talk about mentoring, and individuals making a comment that they say, I was pretty close to leaving, but having a mentor really shows me how much this organization cares. So again, it can be very important. And then the last one we want to talk about is compensation. And again, sometimes I don't think it's always compensation about someone leaving an organization, because a lot of times a better salary may not be why someone's leaving, and may not be the way to keep them. We know that organizations are flatter. We know that sometimes there's budget constraints that don't allow for more salary, more compensation in doing that when you think about it in terms of dollars, and may not align with an employee's expectations. They've come into the organization, they expect certain things to happen. But, again, if you're looking at it from a rewards and a benefits standpoint, it's important to understand that having a mentor is many times seen as an reward, for an employee. People feel like the organizations really care about me, and the organization is focusing on me and giving me a mentor and a mentoring program in doing that. Again, we hear this many times coming from individuals saying, it was really nice to know the organization felt that clearly about me. So let's talk about some future trends that we know. Up to this point, we've talked about why it's important to treat retention as a business case, and we've talked about different things that we know that make employees leave, and then some ways in which the reasons people leave mentoring can help. So now what we want to do is we want to think about some future retention trends in doing this. So some of the future trends that we know that will give you some indication of what's going on. If the economy remains stable, these issues will remain in the forefront of retention strategies. Now, we know the economy is getting somewhat better in what you're doing, but organizations are still having issues around it. First of all, we know you're still going to have an issue where baby boomers exiting are taking that knowledge capital with you. And we want to make sure that knowledge capital stays within the organization. And then, again, part of what we're hearing is that the millennials are in a culture of job jumping in what they do to go forward in doing that. So here's some reported trends that have come up for 2017, and they're pretty dramatic. The first one is, 86% of new hires make their decision to leave or stay an organization within the first 6 months. And so you need to catch them early and make sure they don't. 89% of new hires say they don't have the optimum level of knowledge, and tools necessary to do their job. And that's another reason people are going to leave. It's kind of like I'm kind of left out here, dangling by myself. And then 1/2 of all hourly employees leave their jobs within the first 120 days. And I'm telling you, this is where the organization, when we look at it, say, well, this is going to happen anyway. But you're still looking at 2 times, say a salary range of $30,000 a year. So if you've got that, and half of your hourly workers are leaving their jobs within the first 120 days, you could be talking hundreds of thousands of dollars in loss to your organization. In order to downplay the impacts of all 3 of these areas, employers have got to focus on career development, such as, making sure that individuals are happy and individuals feel valued and they're going to be a part of the organization long term. So at this point in time, Sarah, will you take us through our next poll?
Sure, Judy. Our fourth poll question is, what is your organization's interest in having a mentoring program addressing retention? Is it high, medium, somewhat, low, or none? About half have voted. Okay, I think it's time to close the poll. We have high and medium tied at 38%, followed by somewhat with 17%.
Okay, this is really good news. And, and that high and medium, that you really are considering mentoring to address some of these retention, and it really is important in what you do. Okay, now what we're going to do, after we've talked about all these, things and the future trends and so on, we're going to talk with you on launching a mentoring program that focuses on retention and specifically around the areas of career development. So if you're focusing your program on career development, and this seems to be, and you said from one of our polls, this is one of the biggest issues, you want to make sure that you match by career level, and make sure it's only 1 or 2 levels difference. If you are trying to match individuals and then take them up 2 and 3 levels, it's way too high. Concentrate on that. Try to get a career level up 1, at most up 2, depending on the individual, how long they've been with the organization, and so on. But make sure that when you match individuals by career level, that 1 or 2 levels, no more than that. Your matching questionnaire needs need to focus on the competencies, therefore, of career development. What are your competencies for career development? And specifically, what are your organization's objectives in being able to do this? And it's got to be more than just saying, well, we want our retention levels to go down. Why and how? Where's the biggest area that you are seeing where there's a problem? Possibly do a survey around job attitudes and run reports and thinking in terms of the average tenure now versus, going into a program and then looking at how that has changed, the mentoring program. And then, did anybody change job roles? One of the things that I've been mentioning, repeatedly over and over is when we talk about career development, we're not always talking about promotion. We're talking about, again, because many organizations are very flat now in doing that, but we're talking about possibly taking on more complex assignments or other roles within the organization and being very different. We have one organization we work with, and they're in about their 4th phase of what they're doing. They do, a couple more than one phase per year in doing that, and they're on their 4th phase. And one of the things that the very last time that we were there, the VP of HR came in and made a comment that they wanted to report some facts. And what they reported is that 68% of the individuals that were in the mentoring program had changed job roles, and the survey indicated also in some cases individuals were bored, they didn't have any idea where to go next, what to do, and didn't see much change taking place from their career because it was such a flat organization. But when they got into another job role within the same organization, they were stimulated, they were learning, they were moving forward. So keep in mind that it's not just promotions, it's individuals that are actually changing job roles and doing something a little more exciting than what they were doing previously. So again, we've talked about all these things. Now we've talked about, focusing your program on career development and the things you need to consider. But let's take you through step by step on exactly how you need to put together your mentoring program. First of all, no matter what the focus of your mentoring program is, you have got to tie it to organizational objectives, and you've got to be able to measure results. We consider mentoring to be a business strategy. It's not just a warm, fuzzy, feel-good program. This is a business strategy. And so if you're looking at a business strategy, you need to make sure that you've tied your mentoring program very specifically to business objectives, not just wish lists, but business objectives, and then make sure you're able to measure it in terms of qualitative and quantitative both in the way you're looking at it. Then what you need to do is you've got to be able to qualify and enroll individuals in your program. Now when we talk about qualification, we define a mentor as an individual who's got knowledge or experience in a given area of expertise, who's willing and able to share that knowledge with another. One of the historical misperceptions around mentoring is if somebody was good at what they did, they'd automatically be a good mentor. And we're saying, no, that's not true. Go back to that definition that talks about willing. And the individual is devoted to the mentee, is going to commit to the time to help the mentee to develop. And in addition to that, do they have the skills to be a mentor? Now, this is very different than being good at having the skills to be good at something. Do they have the relationship? And do they have the listening? Do they have the communication? All those kinds of skills that are important in the role of mentor. And then you also need to look at your mentees. Make sure that they understand that it's their role to drive the mentoring partnership and the things they need to do to be able to do that. So qualify your mentors, qualify your mentees, and then make the enrollment process easy. Have a technology tool of some kind so that individuals don't have to go through a whole lot of paperwork to try and get enrolled in your program. But what they can do is they easily can go in to a mentoring portal and be able to enroll in an easy manner. And then you've got to define the benefits and create a marketing plan. Some of those benefits should definitely be tied to your objectives and measurements, and then you've got to create a marketing plan to get this program going. Just because they build it doesn't mean that they will come. So you have to have a marketing plan that will help individuals do that. And think about all the ways that you should include in your marketing plan, ways to get the word out. The most common way is emails, and we know that, but don't let that be the only way that you market this program. Think about it if you've got a career portal within your organization, that you kind of advertise it there. You also want to make sure that your managers are informed about the program, because chances are individuals are going to come to the manager and say, do you think this program is really worth it? So make sure you keep your managers informed. In addition to that, your managers can be a good referral for individuals that they think might benefit from being a part of the program. Also, any webinars that you run, include this as marketing, and you might want to have a special one that is kind of an information format in doing this. You got any organizational events that are coming up? Anything that, many times when we walk into organizations, we see events and booths and people in the lobby or they're in the cafeteria or something like this. So make sure you include those types of things in your organizational event. And if you've got a newsletter or anything at all like that, these are things that can be used to create that marketing plan and look at the benefits and communicate what's going on. Because you want to build your matching and communications to go around there. We already talked about some of those ways that you can build that communication. But what you also want to do, you want to get people excited about this, that they want to be a part of it, they want to join, and why they should do that. Now, the next thing is going to be then set up your enrollment process. And, make sure, again, that it's very easy for people to go in and actually, enroll in the portal, and it's very simple. Now, one of the things that I will say, we're giving these to you in step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We find that organizations sometimes, worked at this order of steps a little differently. We just want to make sure that you have thought about every single one of these as you move forward. Because the next one then is communicating the program. And again, this is where you want to let people know through, possibly webinars, through organizational events, whatever it might be. Get people excited about the program so that they want to be a part of it. And then you want to enroll your mentors, and you want to train them, and you also want to enroll your mentees and train them as you go forward. Because, again, what you're talking about is making sure everybody understands their role and what they're doing. The training should include things about how to be a good mentor, how to be a good mentee, all those things that are important to the individual, because many individuals may never have been in a mentoring program before. And one of the things that we talk about when we talk about mentoring is, the good news about mentoring is it's thousands of years old. But the bad news about mentoring is it's thousands of years old, and there's a whole lot of perceptions and misperceptions out there. So make sure you've got good training. We also suggest you might want to train your managers. And the reason for that is letting them know the ways in which they specifically can support their partnerships, or they can support the mentoring program overall. And then you begin your matching process and make sure that you are matching based on those organizational objectives and the criteria that you've set up. And then what you want to do is make sure you do ongoing evaluations. These become important because a lot of times we've seen organizations that they do all the upfront work and they get everybody excited and they get everybody even trained, and then they drop it. So you want to make sure that you've got ongoing evaluations, ongoing checkpoints, and we suggest your first one is about after 3 months to check in to see if everything's going the way it should, and if there's a problem, you take care of those problems immediately before the partnership or the program goes further. This is going to make sure that your program is sustainable from day one. You also might, consider doing an exit survey. Now, this one happens to say after 6 months, but it's all going to depend on how long your program is. If your program is, 10 or 12 months, you do your exit survey after the program's over. But, even if you don't do an exit survey, do another type of midpoint survey somewhere around 6 or 7 months. We have learned over the years that if you've got a mentoring program that runs somewhere around 10, 12 months, then at about month number 7, what begins to happen is the program begins to wane a little bit. Mentors and mentees begin taking each other for granted a little bit, all of these types of things. So give it an extra shot. Keep it going well in doing that. And then what you want to do is, at the very end, do an analysis of your program as you're going forward. But again, make sure that you take all advantages of your emails, your webinars, your organizational events, your career development, all of these types of things. You take advantage of them to be able to move forward and keep people excited and keep people continually enrolling in the program after you go forward in doing this. And probably one of the last things we want to talk about is program management and benchmarking. Make sure that, because this is a business strategy, that you are going forward and you are making sure that at the drop of a hat, individuals are going to be able to get all of the information they need. And the way that Insala can help is we can help in all these areas, and we can also help you with a technology tool. If someone comes to you from anywhere asking any question about how the program is going, how the partnerships are going, what are people learning, what are people doing, how often are they meeting, all of these types of things, you have got to have a technology tool to help you with that. The technology tool helps you in making sure that your mentoring program doesn't become an administrative nightmare. You want to make sure that doesn't happen. And again, you want to make sure that what you're able to do is, at any point in time when anybody has a question, you have kept up with their reports, you've kept up with the individuals that are in it, you've kept up with all the types of communications that need to be a part of the program, and you can answer their question right away as they go forward. Now, there's very specific ways in which Insala can help. We have a strategy called Plan, Implement, Evaluate, and Manage. In that first area plan, we have a workshop, a strategic planning workshop that we call MORE, Mentoring, Organizational Readiness, and Objectives. And, effectiveness, excuse me. And this is a strategic planning workshop. It helps you identify those business objectives, because this is a business strategy. They're going to tie it to, look at the measurements, always quantitatively and qualitatively as they go forward, and making sure that you've got everything in place to ensure this is going to be a good mentoring initiative. Having those things identified up front. And then when you're actually into implementation, we can help you with training for mentors, for mentees. We can help you on how to build a marketing plan, and we can help you with your launching and facilitating your program. When it comes to the evaluation phase, we can help you with a gap analysis. Your technology tool can give you benchmark data, all kinds of analysis, reports, and so on, and then manage. And the way we can help you there is, again, through the technology tool that we have, strategic account management. We provide continued education and exactly everything that you can do to reach your goal attainment in doing that. One last thing we want to mention is that, are you going to be at ATT Tech? That is going to be on January 24th to the 26th in San Jose. For those of you in the far north, that's probably the time you want to go into some type of sunshine or warmer weather. Well, we're going to be there at ATT Tech. I'm actually going to be speaking on the topic of the Global Knowledge Sharing Network and connecting employees online through mentoring and doing that. And I would love to see any of you. And at the end, in fact, coming up, you're going to have my email address and so on if you'd like to connect while at ATT, if you're already planning, and a lot of people have already set their schedules for that. We'd love to talk to you at that time. So at this point in time, Sarah, do we have any questions?
Yes, Judy. The first question is, why would providing mentoring be better than providing employees a slight pay raise to retain them?
That's a good question, but again, the research upon research upon research has said that a paycheck, whether you're paid biweekly, weekly, however you're paid monthly, a paycheck is only worth 2.5 times your use of that. So what we're saying is, if you pay monthly, and about that third month, people have already gobbled up what's in that paycheck and what's in, in that compensation, and they're now looking for something else. So the point is, you're, just giving them a pay raise to retain them is not going to do it, because there's an underlying reason why they either want to stay or they want to go in doing this. So, compensation is such a short-term reward in doing this. But that's a good question. Thanks, Sarah.
No problem, Judy. The next question is, if there are employees you don't want to retain, should they be a part of the program? If not, how do you manage this?
Good question. Good question. If you've got employees that you may not want to retain, part of that comes when I mentioned before, you need to qualify your mentors and your mentees. Now, if you've got an employee that you think you ought to leave, I'm beginning to look at, first of all, why. Are there skills that they could, or knowledge areas where if they had that development, they'd be a better employee? They say there's 2 reasons that you want to help an individual in their development, or in their performance, I should say. One reason is, I haven't got the skills or knowledge, and this is where mentoring can come in. And the other is, I don't want to, meaning no matter what you do, they're probably not going to change. Many organizations, again, have certain criteria that if you are going to be privileged enough to be a part of a mentoring program, you can't have any performance issues that are coming up at that time that have been recognized by your manager and or HR in the process of doing that. So I think that's one of the things to think about. But again, if you've got an employee and you're saying, I don't know where you want them, to stay on with the organization, I'd say take a deep dive, find out why. Is it possible skills, knowledge, or those types of things that the employee needs? They don't know how to do their job that they're in. Or is it more of an attitude, which is, I just really don't care, whether I'm here or not in doing that. And then you got some other problem. Thanks, Sarah.
The next question is, how can you motivate employees that are high potentials that say they are too busy to have a mentor?
Um, one of the things that we talk about in mentoring is voluntary. Individuals need to volunteer to be a part of the mentoring program. You can't force somebody to be a part of a program. But, one of the things that you need to think about is, does the individual have all the information about the program in doing this? We find many times that individuals that are saying, hey, I don't want to be, it's because of some of those historical perceptions and misperceptions that people have about mentoring, where they just don't feel like that there's, enough going on, and it's like, I've seen mentoring programs before, and, it's a lot of time that I'll be going in, and this is, could go on forever, and I'm doing fine the way I am. But again, make sure you do a deeper dive to find out why is it that employees don't want to be. And legitimately, it may be that someone's, just started a project or just working on something, and they don't have the time. The other thing you want to have them think about is if they had a mentor that was, had a background and skills on the type of project they're working on, could they have a mentor that could really help them to accelerate their development to get that project accomplished? So again, individuals that are high potentials, too busy to have a mentor, make sure they've got all the correct information as to why they may want a mentor in doing that. Thanks, Sarah.
The final question that we've received is, how can I get mentors to enroll and keep them retained?
This goes back to some of those historical perceptions or misperceptions that we have seen. And one of those is that if you ask somebody to be a mentor, and they may have a misperception in their mind and think, oh, geez, this is going to cost me hours and hours per month, and this is like a lifetime commitment. So, I just can't take that on. But if you're very clear to someone that you think would be a good mentor, could qualify as a good mentor, explain to them, let them know, we're asking for a couple hours a month of your time. And, this is only going to be for a period of whatever your program is, 6 months, 8 months, 10 months, a year, whatever it is. Well, when someone gets those types of realities and doesn't have this misperception or a bad image in their head of mentoring, then a lot of times you're going to get the individuals, and you'll have a whole lot better chance of getting them to enroll as a mentor. And then how to keep them? Make sure you keep them stimulated. Make sure that they feel like they're part of a business strategy in what they're doing, and make sure that those things we talked about creating your marketing plan and communications around emails and manager referrals and webinars and organizational events in the career portal, that they know this really is something that the organization is taking seriously, something that they're really going to do. And we've seen, organizations have certain reward programs for the mentors, not compensation, but things like some organizations have where the mentees actually nominate their mentor for Mentor of the Quarter or something like that. Or, things like, having certain meeting and mentees recognizing, in group meetings that, my mentor really helped me here or there. Or when you do your surveys, there might be some really good information there that will tell you, in this mentoring partnership, the mentor, was able to save the organization $41,000 because they worked with the mentee and the project came in faster than they expected, and so on and so forth. So there's all sorts of ways in which you can look at rewarding your mentors and keeping them retained. Thank you, Sarah.
Judy, do you think we have time for one more question?
Yes, let's do.
How do you organize training for mentors and mentees who are situated in different locations and have different work schedules?
We do this all the time because we work with organizations that are spread out all over the globe in what they're doing. The easiest way to do that is first of all, qualify your mentors, have good communications up front, so that when somebody volunteers or wants to be a mentor, they really are clear about what they're getting into. And then as far as training goes, then, webinars can be great. Now, I believe that a webinar should never last more than about 90 minutes max in the training. But you want to make sure, and we do this all the time in webinars, making sure that the webinars are broken up in chunks so that the individuals getting the training can really, take that. We do definitely suggest that you only produce training for mentors separately and mentees separately. Don't put them together in the same training. Maybe do some pre-work, find out where their head is about mentoring, what's the most important thing for them to learn, and then have some really good participant materials that you can hand out afterwards to be used as a reminder to the training. And you also might have some tips and tools in your technology tool, which is a good place where individuals can go back and kind of refer to all those things that are good about the program and how they can be a part of it.
Thanks, Judy. Well, it looks like we're about out of time. Judy, do you have any final thoughts for today?
No, just, I can't tell you how important retention is and what it costs an organization in doing this. But, if any of you would like to discuss this further, you'll see there that my email address as well as a time trade account I have that will connect you right to my calendar and you can book a meeting. But remember, again, go to www.nsala.com and go in the resources section or in www.mentoringtalent.com and look at all the white papers, look at all the previous webinars we've done, and all the extra tools that we have in place to help you make your program be a success in doing that. So thank all of you for participating. Go ahead, Sarah.
Thanks, Judy. And thank you to everyone for attending today's webinar. If you'd like a copy of today's slideshow or a recording of today's webinar, you can find links to both on our Mentoring Thought Leaders group page on LinkedIn later today. If we were not able to get to your questions, or if you think of any additional questions you'd like to talk about, including comments or feedback, please feel free to email us at info@nsala.com, or you can contact Judy directly through jcorner@nsala.com. We truly value your feedback on our webinars. Thanks again for coming, and have a wonderful day.